Welcome. This is part 2 of the What is Enough arc. And part 2, if y'all have been rocking with us right now, it's about...
Are we saying what is enough or how much is enough?
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry.
One more again. One more again. Welcome, y'all, to part 2 of How Much is Enough, this arc where we're talking about our limits at the top and limits at the bottom. And right now, we want to know in this episode how you feel about it. Part 2 is always about our feelings, how you integrate the topic into your personal relationship with money and unpack the behaviors, reactions, and habits around it.
Yes, and you have to unpack your feelings and relationship with money so that you can actually interact with it in a way that's in line with your values and it's in line with your goals too, and you have a clear idea of what your goals are.
In case you don't be doing this stuff and the metaphor seems like a pain, you're like, unpack? What do you mean unpack? That sounds like a lot of work. It is. Unpack just means to deal, right? The metaphor comes from you carrying that baggage on your back. You know how it'll be like, oh, I don't want to roll into this relationship with baggage. You roll into the relationship with baggage because you ain't unpacked that sucker.
There you go.
Acting like you always on tour.
Yeah. No, you got to put that stuff back in the drawers and stuff, right?
Exactly. Put that stuff back in your drawers. Get over your stuff, and then you'll be able to make sense of your relationships.
Wow. So in part 2, we always give you a little recipe for wealth, and we also talk through the money personalities. So our recipe today is recipe for calculating your ideal income.
Ooh.
Yes, because the reality is that before you figure out how much is enough in terms of how much is in your bank account, you also need to know how much is enough in terms of how much you actually need to be making so that you can leave money in your bank account.
Yo, of all the things that we don't talk about with young people and starting out, what your ideal income for the work that you're doing or the work that you want to do is, it's like, wow, how is that not a thing that everybody just knows?
Yeah. And it's interesting. I remember when we were coming up with this recipe, I was like, wait, everyone should have this number. Even if you're not making it yet, and a lot of us might not be, you should know what that number is so that you have a clear goal in mind for what you should be asking for.
I know SOHCAHTOA. I know capitals of places I'm never going to go. I know how to build a bridge out of toothpicks.
Yeah.
But I don't know what my ideal income is.
Oh, okay. Well, dialect, you're in luck. We have a recipe for that.
All right.
So this recipe serves one earner. The prep time is a few hours to actually do the calculations and gather some of the info. And the cook time, depending on, your circumstance, could be any time between 1 month to 1 year, depending on how you're able to ask for a raise, increase your rates, add a side hustle, add another job, things like that. So the ingredients are 1, quote, casual viewing Netflix show. That is literally what they call it. That is a category, Netflix. 1 casual viewing Netflix show to have in the background or whatever your preferred streaming service is. Give yourself 1 hour to review your expenses. You need 3 months of living expenses to get 1 month's average living expenses. And then that will give you 1 year of living expenses. Get yourself 2 cups of a beverage of your choice.
Because it's going to be a while, right?
It's going to be a while. It's going to be a while. You're watching Netflix. You got something to drink. You need 1 monthly savings amount. So that's like 1 savings amount per month that you'd want to ideally be able to save. You need 35% for taxes and buffer. And then 1 reminder that you're not actually bad at math and calculators exist. So before we even break down how to do this calculation, I am going to give you a link to download a spreadsheet that does all the formulating for you. And the link is bit.ly/SC, the letter S, the letter C, ideal income.
I thought the link you were given was to some Netflix because they're raising their prices. So I don't know if everybody can turn that on. You might need a right? Maybe it's just put on YouTube. That's okay.
That's true too.
That's cool too.
Maybe just put on YouTube.
Your whatever's Roku.
Unless you really want Netflix, put that in your budget.
Tubi.
Add it to your ideal income.
That's
Who knows?
Right. Well, I'm more just saying this because Netflix ain't pay us for this one, so I feel like we've said their name too many times.
We have. So okay. So the directions are: step 1, find your fill in the blank show. Whatever streaming service you use, YouTube, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Paramount Plus, CBS Access.
You're just trying to remember all the ones you can
There's
think
so
of.
many, y'all. What the fuck? Cable is like a thing, right? Okay, so directions. Find your show. and settle in. We are in for a math lesson dialect. You ready?
I like math.
You do like math. I actually don't like math, y'all. Funny story, a financial planner who doesn't enjoy math. I don't like math. I don't like numbers. I feel like I'm confessing something right now. But
you do like recipes.
I do love recipes, and I love Excel because it does the math for me. So that's the first step, is chill. And then the next step is add up all of your living expenses for the last 3 months. Now, this is the part I say an hour. If you have to split this up into multiple sessions, feel free to do so. We really want you to go back 3 months, bank statements, a budgeting app. We have budgeting apps that we like: Mint, Personal Capital, Monarch Money, Copilot, things like that.
I know different money personalities are bugging out hearing this. We're going to talk a little bit about how to break that down right after this recipe.
Yes, yeah. So, because this is the math part, right? Because you really need to know, what are you actually spending money on? And the reason why we ask you to get 3 months worth of expenses is because that will account for the variables, right? That will account for the one-offs that always seem to happen. And so once you get that 3 months of living expenses, divide that amount by 3 and you'll get your average 1 month's living expenses. And we ask you to take the 3 months again to give you a more accurate number for the 1 month. And then we want you to multiply that 1 month's living expense number by 12. So that'll give you the entire year. That'll give you an average annual expense amount. Okay, now take a drink.
Ooh, it might be something that's an inebriant, or maybe you just need some hydration.
Yeah, exactly. Because now it's about getting down to what that actual number is. So the next step is to choose an amount of savings that you'd actually like to be able to set aside each month and multiply that number by 12, right? So you have your annual expense number, and then you have your annual savings number. Add those two together, and then multiply it by 35%, so you get taxes and a buffer. And then that is your ideal income amount.
So when we're talking about the kind of savings that we want to have, I know that goes into today's discussion about what is enough, but what is enough savings? What's a reasonable amount? Because, of course, we want to be like, well, I want to put away $1 million a second.
Yeah, that would be so great.
That would be really great.
There's the ideal income right there. Right. So I think going through an example with numbers may help.
Yeah,
let's do that.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so let's say that you add up all of your expenses, and over the last 3 months, all of your spending, including all of your bills, groceries, shopping, all of that, eating out, is around $12,000 over 3 months, right? You divide that by 3, and that means that you, on average, spend about $4,000 a month for everything.
Wait. But what streaming service am I watching? Is it like a really niche one that only shows telenovelas from the 90s?
Oh, my God. Which one is that?
I don't know, but I would watch that one. Soy Maria del Bayo.
Wow, that's a deep cut right there.
Well, come on. That was the jam. That was with Talia. She was a very, very big star at the time.
Oh, my goodness. I love it. So I put in this spreadsheet a random amount. I just chose out of the air $500 a month of savings, right? That sounds kind of nice. So then your monthly outflow, which is your expenses plus savings, is $4,500 a month. $4,000 of living expenses, $5,000 of savings. You multiply that by 12, that's $54,000 for the year. And then you add 35% for taxes and a buffer. And 35% is a pretty solid amount. You're probably setting aside more for taxes than you're actually going to spend on taxes. So that buffer is going to account for random one-off stuff that you're not even thinking about.
So a third is a buffer? Sure, yeah.
Well, plus taxes.
Right, plus taxes.
Yeah,
right? No,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
not the whole buffer. I'm like, wait, that's a big
taxes
buffer,
is probably like
taxes,
20 to 25% of that, right?
And then the rest of it. So it's like, yeah, that sounds more buffery.
Yes, exactly. But I feel you, yeah.
I mean, hey, if you need that much buffer, that's another thing to feel out, right? As we're saying these numbers, if you hear that and you're like, whoa, that still doesn't feel like enough, then add more buffer to your buffer.
And I would add more buffer to your savings if you feel like that doesn't feel like enough. And so that's how you gauge, right? You're kind of guessing and you're making it up right now. That's why the spreadsheet is fillable. So then when you add up the $54,000 of annual expenses plus savings, 35% for taxes and buffer, then your ideal income is $72,900. So $73,000.
Can we get a round of applause for Pam getting through a math problem? Look at that. It was great.
Thank
See?
you. Excel did all that, y'all.
You said you hated, but it was all right.
It wasn't bad.
It was all right. Well, for my math non-lovers out there, y'all, remember, you don't actually have to do the math. I was joking about the SOHCAHTOA. You can just ask the calculator to do it.
Yeah, you can ask the calculator. And so to go back to your question, Dialect, right? How much should you be thinking about for savings is play around with it. I just guessed the number 500 and the ideal income. If that ideal income number looked doable, right? Because there's also in this spreadsheet a place for you to put in your current income, and then it calculates the difference between your current income and your ideal income, right? Then you can see, oh wait, maybe if I'm able to save more, or wait, $73,000, I can ask for that raise easily, right? And then you're like, okay, wait, I can't actually save that much if I just ask for that raise. Or you're like, wait, I'm getting way underpaid for what my actual needs are and my ability to save is. So let me try looking for another job, and then I can actually save that amount of money.
You see how the math can lead you to the problem solving that you really want to do?
Yeah. And this is why we want you to go through the exercise of really figuring out how to get as accurate an idea of your expenses are as possible. These are all still estimates. These are all still guesses. But when you can get down to that number, the feeling you get at the end of a spreadsheet will tell you what your next course of action needs to be.
Use a calculator to calculate your feelings. Again, go to bit.ly/SC ideal income. The SC stands for Santa Claus because Pam has given you a gift.
Oh, thank you.
Just, I don't know why.
That's pretty good.
There were a lot of options for SC, and I was like, what are we going to do? It's sea change. It's sea change.
It stands for sea change.
It's sea change. I don't know if y'all.
But also it stands for Santa Claus. You're not wrong. And South Carolina. Anything else? Anything else you got?
No, we're not going to go.
So now that we've all gone through a math lesson, some people may be having feelings about it right now. So let's talk about our feelings, Dialect.
Okay, so I alluded to this a minute ago. Our money personalities, some of y'all are like, oh, this is great. And some of y'all are like, I need to hide away right now because this is not great. So let's start with the people who love it. Right? Our complicators, right?
Hi, everyone. I hate numbers, but I love spreadsheets.
Well, that's the thing about the spreadsheets, right? The money personalities, I think, is so great because it doesn't have anything to do with your ability, right? It has to do with your comfortability. And spreadsheets will do math for you. So you don't have to be good at math to be able to use a spreadsheet. So I want you to remember that the past incomes, levels of saving, all these things are your baselines. And you've already had anxiety about these things. I want you to remember the anxiety you have with these numbers.
You're talking to the complicators, right?
Yeah, all my complicators.
Oh, yes.
I'm talking to you.
Oh, yes. He's looking at me right now, literally. I'm like, who are you talking to right now, Dialect?
No, it's funny. Usually, right, y'all, she just lets me go through this part. And you saw she interrupted. It was like, wait, you talking about me now.
Well, and also for the uninitiated, if you don't know what your money personality is, go to brunchandbudget.com/personality and take the 30-second money personality quiz and come right back to us.
Okay, you're done. You did it. You paused it. You came back. So the thing about complicators is about dealing with your anxiety. All of these money personalities deal with how we mess around with stress and we protect ourselves. What I need you to do is actually remember the anxiety, that you have about these numbers. I need you to look at the trends. What lessens your anxiety? What strengthens your anxiety? What makes it worse? So find that inflection point of income, savings, and anxiety. This is the way that you deal with this. Basically, there's this recipe that you were doing a minute ago. You find that place where your anxiety is at its lowest and the savings is at its highest. And wherever those places meet, that's your number.
Oh, it's just a graph.
Yeah, money tends to make you more anxious even when you have more money when you don't know what you're supposed to do with it.
Yo, that is so real for all my fellow complicators because the way that money equals security for me as a complicator, right? And so in my head, more security is better, which means more money is better. And when we're really thinking about how much is enough, if it's never going to feel like enough for me as a complicator, I'm always going to be anxious about money. So until I see that number, that ideal income, that ideal asset level, whatever it is, the anxiety is never going to stop.
This is why, it's funny, I think complicators are the ones who are kind of the most affected by this. We wrote the most about y'all on this. It's why you can be making the biggest salary you've ever had in your life and you're still living paycheck to paycheck. I think nobody is more susceptible to
but also
the
somehow
creep
still
of lifestyle.
I feel like that for complicators, it feels like you're living paycheck to paycheck, but also like you still have a bunch of savings and you're still anxious.
Well, you call it paycheck to paycheck because your savings doesn't count. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's why the anxiety is a lot more, and
Yeah.
why you need to not only have the plan, but the plan for what to do with the other stuff that's not in your plan.
Yes. Yes.
So let's not allow the complicators to monopolize the conversation like they be doing.
Monopoly.
You heard me. Contemplators. So y'all need to remember that you need enough to feel good. You need enough to feel so good that you're not looking at your stuff, that you're not stressed about looking at your stuff. You need to make sure you have a full F-off fund. I know contemplators like more of an F-off fund than an emergency fund or a rainy day fund. So think about how long you trying to F off. The number that we need you to have and figure out in terms of your anxiety and stress is how many days do you want to go without ever having to worry about thinking about, stressing about, believing that you even have a bank account. Look at your calendar. You've got that date that you set for yourself of like, you got to go look at your money. You got to go look at it for at least a half an hour. You got that date set. Do you want it to be a week away? Do you need it to be 2 weeks away? If that's the case, then you're going to need to raise that number.
Yeah. That's the buffer. Contemplators need a buffer because you are very good at keeping everything in your head. You are also very good at dealing with things when they hit the fan. And that buffer is going to help you have time to figure it out in a way that you haven't had before.
Well, I mean, I want to be a little more specific for my contemplators. You need a border before you have a buffer. You're going to need a buffer too. But I think you need a solid line before you have that dither mess around money. Because what I found with contemplators when I rock with them, 'cause I'm not a contemplator, so I don't want to be like speaking y'all feelings, but the ones that I've been around, the anxiety also comes in when they don't know.
Yes.
So even if
true.
you got a little bit of buffer, that might hold you down a little bit, but you're still going to be distracted. You're still going to be messing with, and it's not going to be right for you until you know for sure and then have a buffer.
I like that. And I think for contemplators, figuring out what that ideal income is means that you can move on, right? You're like, okay, now I know the number. I can have it in the back of my head and not really think about it that much until I need to figure out how to get it.
For my paper chasers, set it off on the left. Y'all set it up on the left. Y'all set it off. Set it off. I suggest y'all set it off. Yo, for paper chasers, I want to know. You seen the classic at this point film, Set It Off, right? You know what would you do with one last score? What would that look like? That. And you know, I say it like hyperbolically with the movie and stuff, but paper chasers, y'all are the ones who start businesses, right? You do your thing. And I want my paper chasers, I want you to think about if you didn't have to have another job, you were going off into that I'm 40 and retired, semi-retirement. Of course, you're still going to be coming up with schemes and stuff, but that one last big job, what would that look like? What would that pay you? If all your projects together were to be one big thing, what would that look like? Because I want to ask you if you can do that, and then after that, you never have to take a gig just because you can. Really, I'm looking even at you over on this. You never have to take a gig just because you can. You take the gigs that you want and only the ones you want because you had the last big score and you're good money. What does that look like? When we're figuring out our number for enough, I think that's where it is. Because you can always think of like, well, there always could be another thing. And then, you know, I did such a good job with that last person that their homie could contract. And what if the person above them wanted to? Sure, cool, you can. You're talented. You're smart. But what's the thing that you want to do? And what's the big score you need before you get there? That's your number.
Yo, are you looking at Willie because he's a paper chaser?
A little bit. You got some paper chasery tendencies.
Right, that's the thing, right? Paper chasers, you're great at saying yes to everything, and you're great at making money, and you know how to make it, and money is in motion for you, right? And so if you can figure out how to truly feel in control of that money being in motion, like Dialect said, like this one, if you could combine all of these things into this one dream thing and not have to take 5 jobs.
Let me quick, I feel like for certain personalities we're going farther on this time, but it's, you know, paper chasers, I wanted to dispel a myth about paper chasers. Paper chasers aren't inherently greedy people. And for the most part, the paper chasers that I've met have been very community minded. And one of the reasons why paper chasers hustle so much is that they think that the block, the town, the world is going to fall to pieces if they don't have the next thing, if they're not able to pull things forward. Paper chasers become their own stock market. And I want y'all to find this place where you're like, I'm good. I've done what I need to do. I can put the glove with my 3 adamantium claws back on the shelf, and I don't have to fight in a world that hates and fears us anymore.
There you go. I love it. Okay,
and
money monk.
And for our money monks,
I'm
right?
looking at you, dialect.
Saving myself for last. You want to tell me? Well, so maybe I should give you the
tell
last.
you about yourself.
Well, the first thing I said is don't make it about you. Don't make it about.
Well, that's a funny thing about money monks, right? For money monks, the question of how much is enough was like, what's the least amount that I can have? That's enough.
Yeah, it's. I don't think I'm talking about this on the show, but I always talk about this cat. I remember seeing either a film or reading a thing about these monks who believe that there's a finite amount of suffering in the world. So what they do is they inflict torture on themselves so that they can lessen the suffering of other people. And I think that's a thing that, it's where like the name kind of comes from, where money monks, we tend to do that stuff to ourselves. So I need us to think about someone who isn't us. Someone who's like us. Maybe it's a younger person in our position. Maybe it's the abstract idea of the people coming up. Maybe it's people we know in the neighborhood, friends of ours who are also money monks that we wish would take care of themselves more. Someone that we know doesn't have enough. And I want you to look at this person, treat it like a case study, and be like, okay, so if this person had enough from what they tell me, from what I've observed, what would they have? What kind of protections would they have? Not only their income and their savings, but what kind of stuff around them would they have? The things that, I'm assuming money monks, you don't have because you're waiting to make sure everyone else has so you can have. What are those foundations that they need to have for you to feel like you don't have to help them? Then do that for you. And that's your number. It's actually simpler for money monks, I think, than a lot of heads, even though this is so much easier said than done.
That doesn't sound simple at all. That sounds like a very difficult exercise for a money monk to do, because in your head, I know you're thinking the whole time, dialect, I know I'm supposed to be thinking about someone else, but I also know I'm actually thinking about me. And if I'm actually thinking about me, I could really do without these things. And the practical thing that I want money monks to do when you calculate your ideal income is to double that number. Yeah. I want you to double that savings number. I want you to add another 15% to that buffer, because the reality is I know that your instinct, dialect, I mean money monks, I know that your instinct is to figure out how you can do the most with the least.
Yeah.
How much is enough to you is like a challenge.
Yes. Yeah. Well, because there's this idea, I think, similar to the paper chaser, where we're like, well, if I'm increasing my capacity, then we're increasing our capacity. So everything is getting bigger. Again, this is even our money monks. This is the capitalism talking and not the you talking. The feel that you have this ever expanding egg that you need to be chasing after and going and finding the borders.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Whew. Okay, y'all.
Yeah, no. That's really real. I think. Well, can I ask you, as a non-money monk who deals with money monks, I think when you're saying that the hardest part of this is really the first step. And when we're trying to find this thing for ourselves and we're looking outwardly, what's the first thing we have to do to make it not feel like it's about us?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think that you have said this before, dialect, is that you are part of your community.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You want to take care of your community and you are part of it. So that means that you have to take care of you. And you find ways to prioritize taking care of your community. I'm
going to give a specific example of that I've done. When I came up with the whole, oh, you're a part of your community, I went and looked up what people at my job would make. Not at Pockets Change, but people who are in my position.
Yes.
And I gave myself an ideal income based on that. And I was because that's what folks should be getting, and there's the baseline, and we can negotiate up and down based around that, but give yourself that at first. Just look at the glass door of it all.
First step is research. All right, I love it.
So we're going to stop talking because we've been jawing a bunch at you, but we have even more better things. It's time to preach to the choir so we know what to sing. The Chief of Membership Policy and Equity at the National Community Reinvestment Coalition, Diedrich Asante Muhammad, is here to drop some ideas about what enough is and how much is enough in a racial wealth divide context. So let's listen to our homie Diedrich.
The way you finessed Diedrich's title right there.
Yeah, right.
Well done.